I'm Dr. Patrice Berry, and here I share educational videos on a variety of topics. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about turning pain into purpose. Lots of people experience negative life events, and sometimes we call those little traumas and big traumas, or little T's and big T's. There's also the Adverse Childhood Experiences study that breaks down 10 different things that people can go through. And we know, based on research, if people experience a number of these things in early childhood, sometimes that can predict things later in life. And based on that, I just wanted to take this time to talk about how we can turn our pain into purpose. And there are a few different identities that you can have. You can have a victim identity where nothing is ever your fault, that life just happens to you. You don't really have control in your life. And it's really easy to feel that way, especially someone who's experienced negative event after negative event. It can feel like the world, like there's something against you. And then there's a survivor identity where somebody says, even though I've been through these things, I'm still going to go forward. I'm not going to let that hold me back. I'm still going to take responsibility and accountability for my part. And then lastly, there's a thriving mentality. That's where somebody says, because of the things that I've been through, I am now going to do this, or because of this, I'm now going to make sure that these things don't happen to children again, or I'm going to become a therapist and provide a safe space for people, or because of these bad things, I'm going to turn these bad things that happened into something positive in my life. And often therapy can be very beneficial to help somebody work through a lot of their pain and their grief and the guilt and the shame and a lot of the things that naturally come when somebody experiences something traumatic or experiences a really negative life event. 2020 has been its own negative life event, and it'll be interesting to look back at some of the research that is done on the children that are growing up during this time. I see my own child where sometimes he wants to wear a mask, and if he wants to wear a mask, we let him wear it. Because there are times when he may not want to wear a mask, but we have to. And so it'll just be interesting to look back at how some of these kids grow up. But there are some key things that we can do to build resilience, to build the positive life that we each deserve. And one of the first things that people have to do is stop avoiding. Avoidance works. It's a strategy where if I don't want to do something, just not doing things. I say that sometimes to people in session that it's easy to not do things. It is hard to do things. It is hard to show up and do therapy. It is hard to talk about things that you don't want to talk about, experience emotions that you don't want to experience. And using avoidance sometimes is normal. We all do it, but sometimes avoidance can become the main way that somebody gets through life, and that's where bills pile up, or emotions end up not being managed, or relationships end up getting broken, or people end up engaging in behaviors that sometimes sabotage things. And we'll get to self-sabotage a little bit later, but really doing work in therapy can be beneficial. And some treatments that are really effective for trauma, Emdr, that's one where they use bilateral stimulation, where sometimes the therapist will use their finger or they'll use a light. They'll use a different way to get somebody to reprocess the traumas that they've experienced. Because when negative things happen, they get stored in the emotional part of our brain. Because if a bear is chasing me, I don't need to think, what kind of bear is that? Like when bad things happen, you normally hold on to a lot of the emotional and sensory things. A lot of the logic and a lot of the left brain activity shuts down, and that's why it's very common that people struggle to find words sometimes for things. And EMDR is a great way to reintegrate a lot of the negative things that can sometimes pop up. Because even flashbacks are actually a way our brain is trying to help us reprocess, to say, this is still an issue. This is something that you haven't dealt with. And that's where sometimes therapy can be very helpful in helping people manage a lot of those things. Trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy, that's the one that I'm trained in and that I frequently use in my sessions with people, because we often make associations based on what we've been through that may not be true. And so somebody that maybe secrets were a big thing in their family, and now when their child keeps lies, that is a major trigger for them. But it's not really about what's happening here. It's really about what happened in the past. And some of the associations that people have made end up being problematic for them down the road. And there are lots of other trauma-informed approaches, and Psychology Today is a great resource here in America that people can use. There are lots of other international sources that are available as well. Find your purpose. Find what it is that you would do for free. What's that thing that kind of drives you? What's that thing that helps motivate you? Often when negative things happen, it is hard to think beyond our nose. It is hard to think into the future. So that's why a lot of my work is helping people think a week down the road, or a month, or a year, trying to help them think long term. And when you have more of a long-term focus, you don't always get stuck as much in the past, and you can actually take time to experience the present, because there tends to be some hope that tomorrow can potentially be different or can potentially be better based on some of the decisions that we make today, versus a mentality that says, it doesn't matter what I do, like nothing ever changes, nothing ever gets better. And that's typically somebody that's struggling to see beyond their present moment and struggling to have hope or anything for the future. And the last tip is to stop self-sabotage. It is so easy to get in your own way. And when you've grown up with chaos, or if you've experienced a lot of negative things, or even after one thing happens, we can sometimes develop this pattern where we push people away before they can push us away, or you get used to the drama. Because if somebody grows up and yelling, screaming, throwing things, that's the norm. When they're in conflict with their partner and things are peaceful, that can sometimes not feel safe, because they learned how to survive in the midst of chaos. And now they have to learn how to thrive in the midst of peace, which sometimes people think, oh, that's going to be easy. Like, it's so easy to do that. But no, sometimes they'll be triggered and think that in the quiet and the peace, that's when the unexpected happens. Or I've worked with lots of people where anxiety or different negative emotions came up in the midst of calm and peaceful situations. So if you don't hear anything else, the one thing that I want to make sure that people know is that the past does not determine your future. The past sometimes contribute to some of the things and feelings that we feel in the present. And that's where partnering with a therapist or partnering with somebody to work through some of those emotions, some of those feelings, changing some behaviors. Because if you do the same thing over and over again, and that's where I really feel that people do the best they can. But the problem comes when their best doesn't help them reach where they want to go. And that's where asking for help, reaching out for help and support, and finding the right person. I think I have another video that talks about finding a therapist, because finding the right person can really help you move forward. There are lots of other great therapists on here that have amazing content. I will link a few of my favorite videos down below. There is a triggers video that I often share in treatment with people, and a few other things that I found helpful too. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.